Hello and welcome to First Bank's Center for Family-Owned Businesses webinar series. I'm Mike Vandervelde and I'll be your facilitator. Today, we'll spend 30 minutes with a one-minute manager and explore the joy of succession. Just a quick reminder, the lines are muted, but at any time, please send us your questions through the webinar tool, and we do encourage those questions. At this time, I'd like to introduce the host and president of First Bank, Mr. Mike Dierberg. Mike, take it away.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to First Bank Center for Family-Owned Businesses webinar series. We're so glad you could join us. I am the chair of the holding company of First Bank, also a fourth generation family member in the business of First Bank. And the next 45 minutes or so are going to be one of the great joys, I think, of my year this year, because we have the great privilege of speaking with one of the preeminent authors and thinkers in the business world in the United States and the world as well. So our special guest speaker is Dr. Ken Blanchard. So Ken is a premier American author, business consultant, and world-renowned motivational speaker. Ken's writing career has encompassed over 60 published books. Of course, you may recognize him from his most well-known book, which is The 1 Minute Manager, which sold over 15 million copies and has been translated into many languages. Ken is also co-founder and chief spiritual officer of the Ken Blanchard Companies, an international management training and consulting firm that he and his wife, Margie Blanchard, began in 1979 in San Diego, California. Respected for his lifetime of groundbreaking research, Ken's insight, experience, and expertise has influenced and guided organizations, individuals, and businesses on management and leadership throughout the world. Today, we're fortunate to have Ken share his insights with us regarding the joy of succession. Now, without much further ado, please help us welcome Dr. Ken Blanchard.
Mike, it's with you. I didn't think you were going to get that resume from my mother. She's been dead a number of years ago, but all those good thoughts only could come from a mother.
Well, Ken, so not only are you a preeminent author, thinker in the world of business, but you yourself are in a family business and have several family members in the family business that have been a part of the business and are still in the business. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the Ken Blanchard Companies and then also your recent experience with succession.
Well, we started our company in the late 1970s, and my wife was really the one that pushed it, because she said so many people who do consulting and teaching and writing and all maybe have an agent or one or two people working for them, and they're telling people how to run big organizations, and they don't have one themselves. So she said, let's see if we can practice what we preach. And so we've now been in business over 40 years, and we have over 250 people working with us, and we have people working in all the continents and all, and it's really been a kind of a fun journey over the years to build that. And the number of companies who have lasted 40 years in this country is around 5% and all. So we feel pretty proud that we've been able to last that long. And I think part of it is that we continue to pass on the leadership appropriately or inappropriately and deal with it and all. But when we started, I was smart enough that Margie should be president. She has a PhD in communications, and I'm more of a head cheerleader. My title, as you said, is I'm the chief spiritual officer, and I leave a morning message for everybody every day, and I'm getting help now from my wife Margie and my son Scott, so wife Mad and our daughter Debbie. But we leave a message every single day, and we do three things. One is we cheer people on that have done good things, and then we talk about exciting developments in the company, and then we end by giving people something inspirational to think about. And I met a guy in an airport a while back from New Zealand, and he sent me a letter, and he said, Ken, the business that you're all in is you're in the business of teaching people the power of love rather than the love of power. And I love that.
I love that. Yeah, that's great. Well, it's clear you guys practice what you preach. I mean, congrats on the success you guys have had over this period of time. It's not just the wisdom you guys have been sharing, but also the success you've had as an organization. So talk a little bit about the succession that Scott has taken into the president role and how that went, and also any insight that you have as far as pointers or ideas for other businesses looking at succession.
Well, our son Scott took over in early in 2000, right before all the COVID stuff hit like crazy. But let me just tell you, after a number of years, my wife Margie decided she stepped down as president because she was interested in studying the future. She felt that organizations have two major elements. One is to manage the present, and the other is to plan the future. And she felt the big mistake that organizations make is that they take away people with present time responsibilities on retreats and have them plan the future. She felt they'll kill your future because they're either overwhelmed with the present or have vested interest in it. And she thought that there ought to, in many ways, be a president for the present and a president for the future. So she decided she would head up the Office of the Future. And we made a couple of mistakes initially because we brought in some outsiders to take over as president. And both of them turned out to be busts, because, they were coming into a culture that was pretty well established, and was, set up to practice what we preach and all. And they had their own ways of operating, and they didn't listen and all that kind of thing. So we really needed to do that. Every time that happened, Margie would have to step back in and all that kind of thing. And then we finally got it right. I think if you're going to really success plan well, you should hire somebody from within your organization, not from without. And so we hired a wonderful guy by the name of Howard Farfel, and he came in initially, to our sales operation, and then we had him heading up I think he came in the marketing, and then he headed up our whole sales operation. And he did well in both of those areas. And so when we had the opportunity for somebody to take over the leadership again, we appointed Howard as the president. And he was already well thought of by everybody. He knew our culture and all of that kind of thing. And so you wonder, well, how did our son Scott become president? Well, Howard, in December 1999, came to us and said that he got a great offer, that he just couldn't turn down in another organization, and with more money and all that kind of stuff. And so he stepped down. And so as a family, we sort of said, okay, what are we going to do now? And it's interesting, Mike, because when our son Scott and our daughter Debbie and Margie's brother Tom, who was born when she was a freshman at Cornell, so he's 18 years younger than, all joined our company about 25 years ago. Our son Scott had become a big fan of Peter Drucker. And Drucker always said, nothing good in life happens by accident. Put some structure on it. And so Scott said, I think we should form a family council with the five of us on the family council. And eventually we added Scott's wife Madeline and Tom's wife Jill and all. And so we meet as a family with an outside consultant. Scott said we got to get an outside consultant to facilitate the meetings and all. We had the first consultant for over 10 years, and now we've had two different ones, and we have a fabulous woman consultant right now. And we meet once a quarter for a whole day as a family. And the topics are really, how are we doing as a family? We start off with a check-in, what's happening new in your life and all. And then what do we have planned and all that. So like we just got back this last week from taking 18 of us to Hawaii to celebrate my wife Margie's 80th birthday, because Margie had really pushed us that our family mission statement is to make magical memories. So Margie and I told our kids and all that we weren't going to leave them a lot of money. We were going to spend it on making magical memories. And we have a ski program, which is spend your kids' inheritance. Uh, and but what we really did is we have the family council, and then we also have an executive committee, which consists of the family and then people from the leadership team, the head of marketing, the head of HR, the head of product development, and all that really takes a look at the issues of the company. And so when our president Howard got a better opportunity, we said, okay, who's going to take over as president? And everybody went, Scott. Scott's in his mid-50s and, has really come up through the organization over the years. And it was just the right time for him to take over. And he's just done a great job. He took over, 2.5 months before COVID hit, and at that time, we were doing maybe 20 or 30 online programs a month. And Scott went out and hired, with his team, all kinds of good new technical people that transferred our stuff. So now we're doing over 800 or 900 online programs a month, a complete transition from face-to-face to online. And now face-to-face is coming back, but online and the Zoom stuff is never gonna go away. So it's
well, it's great that Scott was such an easy choice, that he had the experience within the company, and that it sounds like he was really geared up for the trial by fire that the pandemic presented. So it's amazing testament to you guys, to the family and the company. So one of the questions that's come in is, so what if, someone whether it's someone in the family or there's some event that happens and you don't have anybody within the company who's ready to take over, then what?
Well, then you got to go out and try to, look for the right people. And one of the big things that I think companies make a mistake is when they hire a new person from outside, it's only the top management team that interviews them and all. And then they announce it and all. And our philosophy has been, and I think it is a good one, is if you're going to search for somebody and you got some candidates you think are good, everybody in the organization should have a chance to meet them and talk to them and see if they seem to be the right fit, because what you want them to do is be able to relate to everybody and to also to understand the culture. And so just don't bring in somebody from the outside and keep it kind of quiet and then announce and sort of say, here's our new president, and the drums go off. I think it ought to be, participation throughout the company to say, wow, we feel really good about this guy or this gal. I think she's going to really make a difference in there. So I would do that.
And Ken, if you could talk about communication, the importance of communication in the process of succession planning.
Well, I think it's so important, as I said, to make sure that you keep on talking with people, that you involve people. And if it's a family business, form a family council. I've seen a lot of family businesses where they're all fighting, because nobody's ever, brought them together to talk. And they might have a couple of sisters that are raising families and didn't work, and they didn't get a job in the country, and they don't have ownership and all that kind of thing. You want to keep things out front of people and be open with your family. And if it's not a family business, be open with the people that work with you so that they really feel that they're a part of the organization. It's not just a top-down deal. We believe, Mike, truly in what we call side-by-side leadership rather than top-down leadership, and I'm interested in servant leadership. And you can always tell a self-serving leader because everybody's sucking up the hierarchy. They're trying to please the person up above them, where what we want eventually is for people to be working for the hierarchy, not the hierarchy working for them. And so With servant leadership, it's interesting when I mention that to a lot of people. Initially, they think I'm talking about the inmates running the prison or trying to please everybody or some religious movement. But there's two parts of servant leadership. One is vision, direction, values, and goals, because leadership's about going somewhere. And it's the responsibility of top management to make sure everybody knows what the purpose of the business is, what your picture of the future is, what are your values that drive, and what are the goals and all. Doesn't mean you don't involve people, but it's your responsibility. If they don't know what business you're in and all that, it's your fault. I go into organizations, I said, do you have a clear vision statement and all? They say, God, it's got to be around here somewhere. So maybe it's on one of the walls, and you can't just do it. You got to live it. But that's the leadership part of servant leadership. And once that's done, now you turn the pyramid upside down and you move to the servant part of servant leadership. And now top management works for the people that work for them. And eventually everybody's working for the customers. And you turn that thing upside down. You're there to serve rather than be served, because that's where the action is, so that people really feel that they're a part of the organization. That's why in succession planning, you'd want to involve people throughout the organization. Let them see who we're thinking about bringing in as a new president or vice president, or, and it also, I think, plays down throughout the organization. If you got somebody at the supervisory level, near the customers, and they leave, and you need succession planning, you need to involve the people there. Who are we going to get to take their place?
Ken, in the context of succession planning, so if it's the top of the company, you might have a board of directors or some, family council or some group that helps oversee that process. So it's not necessarily one individual's choice about who the successor is. How do you avoid a situation at lower levels of the organization or throughout the organization so that it's not a personal decision? I think probably a lot of employees worry about that kind of thing, that their elevation within the company is just a function of whether they're, the personal preferences of their immediate boss.
Well, I think, again, it's involvement, it's communication. It's if you lose a manager lower in the organization, you should bring the people together in that department and say, as you know, Al or Mary are going somewhere else, or something's happened there, and we're going to need to do, what do you all think? Is there anybody in the ranks, that you think would be a really good person that you'd like to be the new supervisor? Or, how do you want to be involved? So you involve people throughout the process. You don't do it to people. Servant leadership, you don't do to people, you do it with people. And that's where the side-by-side leadership really comes into play.
What about the use of outside consultants? How do you view that? And talk about a little bit about the opportunity, the importance of doing that at the highest level of the company.
Well, we have a consultant that works with both the family council, and then a different consultant that works with the board of directors, And we think it's good to have outsiders there, not only to facilitate the meeting, but to be there available one-on-one for different leaders to talk to about an issue that helps, so they have an outside perspective. And so you look for a consultant who's been around the barn, who's run organizations, not just consulted and all, and see who you can. And we've been fortunate to really have good people working with us as outside consultants. And don't be afraid to get advice, and get input from people. Sure, you might have to make the final decision, but the more involvement from your people as well as expert outside of both, the better you are going to be.
Can you talk about servant leadership in the context of the family? So you have the family members who wear the hat of management of the company, but then you also have family members who may not be a part of the leadership of the company, but are still part of the ownership group. Do you view, as you look at it, is that the servant leadership come into play in the context of the owners, the family owners of the business?
Well, I think, you'll have certain family members who will be in leadership positions, and then other family members that won't be, but they have an ownership piece. Again, you got to involve them. You got to make sure that they know what's going on. That's why, we've expanded our family council. It includes spouses and other people. And we are now excited. We got a third generation member that just joined the company. She's 23 years old and really sharp and all. And we're hoping to have other ones join in as we look on to who's going to succeed Scott. And our daughter Debbie's the head of marketing, and Georgie's brother Tom is the CEO and the chief financial guy. And we want to keep the thing going. Is that you don't want people out in the dark who are throwing darts because they don't know what's going on, and particularly if they're family members and they own a piece of the business, where they ought to be involved in knowing what's going on, having a say in that, not to block movement forward, but just to make sure that they feel that they're part of the family.
Great. So I think at this point, I want to turn over to questions. But before we do, Ken, anything else you want to add before we turn over to questions?
Well, the thing I'd like to add is that people ask me what makes a great leader. And to me, the best leaders I know are people who are comfortable with who they are. A guy wrote a book years ago, I'm okay, you're okay. And the worst life position is I'm okay, you're not, and those are people who are really covering up not okay feelings about themselves. That the real way to be is I'm okay, and so are you. We might have some differences and we might have to work on some issues, but we're both coming at it from an attitude of okayness. And I think that's really important. And we want to keep egos out of it. We've developed a 12-step Egos Anonymous program. And so periodically we will have Egos Anonymous meetings. And some of our clients, it's just great to have them, and it's always voluntary, so somebody will stand up and say, hi, I'm Ken. And everybody will say, what? Hi, Ken. And then say, I'm an egomaniac. And the last time my ego got in the way was, and there's two ways your egos get in the way. One is false pride, when you act like you're more than the other people and they're less than. That's a I'm okay, you're not. And the other ego problem is when you have fear or self-doubt. You don't feel strongly about yourself. And so the anecdote or the cure for false pride is humility. People often think humility is a weakness. I think it was C.S. Lewis or one of those guys said years ago, people with humility don't think less of themselves. They just think about themselves less. And the anecdote or the cure for self-doubt is to realize that God didn't make any junk. There's a beautiful thing my mother used to say to me, don't you act like you're better than anybody else, but don't let anybody else act like they're better than you. There's a pearl of goodness in everyone. Dig for it and you'll find it. And I think that's what people need to know, is what's the pearl of goodness in me, so that we're okay. Because if you feel good about yourself, then it's easy for you to involve other people and seek their opinions. Because even if they disagree with you, it's not putting you down. It's just contributing to the success of what you're trying to do.
That's great advice and a great mindset, especially for these days. It seems like sometimes we lose that perspective a lot. So why don't we turn over to questions? So one of the questions is, it's perhaps a hypothetical, but so there's an inside person, let's say an inside person is the best candidate that has the correct values, but is weak in leadership. So the person has the values, but is weak in leadership. What options are there?
Well, send them to leadership training. We started a master's degree program at the University of San Diego. I looked at all the MBA programs around the country at that time, and they weren't teaching anything about leadership. They were putting it in an organizational behavior class. And I think that leadership starts with self-leadership, and that's why we have people really make sure they feel good about themselves, know what their DISC profile is, all this. My wife and I teach a course in leadership point of view and all. And then you move to one-on-one leadership where you're building trust. And then from there to team leadership where you're trying to build a sense of community, and finally organizational leadership where you're trying to build a culture. We have half of the courses in our master's degrees are on leadership. And we have had tons of people in our company go to our master's degree program and all, because, we have good people who have the right values and all. We just want to shore them up on the leadership thing. And we do a lot of internal training. We test a lot of our training with our own people to not only get feedback, but also to make sure that they have it. And so often in organizations, they might throw a leadership training program at people, but it never goes anywhere. It's just kind of a fringe benefit. But it needs to be part of your culture.
So Ken, it seems like you had this ideal situation where it was such an easy choice to have Scott be successor. But what we know and you've seen is that a lot of times it's not so obvious, where there might be multiple candidates, maybe a family member, may not be a family member. So what advice do you have, next is the next question, what advice do you have for family businesses who might have multiple qualified successors in the next generation?
Well, I've already talked about that, is that you want to give those folks a chance first to talk, to the hierarchy initially, but eventually expose them to as many people in the organization as possible so they can sort of say, boy, that person really feels good. And that person might not be a family member and all, because you want to have people excited about new leaders coming in, not sort of saying, I wonder what they're going to be like. I've never even met them before, and so.
But what if, I guess if it's, let's say there are, 2 or 3 internal candidates who seem like they could be really strong. Are you an advocate of sort of making that public or semi-public, that there are, that basically these are potential successors within the organization? Is that something you would advocate communicating?
Well, I think it certainly has got to be communicated where you want them to take over leadership. If it's at the top, you might say, yeah, we're really blessed. We got 3 really viable candidates, and we want to kind of sort out, who might be the best. And once that's decided, how the other 2 people can integrate with that leader and make a powerful leadership team, because you don't want to kick the other people out who don't make it, so again, it's involvement, it's communication, it's listening, it's asking more than telling, and all these are all great servant leadership behaviors.
Thanks, Ken. All right, so next question is, if there is no internal option for succession, what role can M&A play to ensure the continuity of the business and give existing stakeholders liquidity?
What's M&A?
Mergers and acquisitions.
Well, it's really interesting about that. You have to really take a look at what that's going to do. We had an opportunity, a large company came in and offered the family a lot of money and wanted to buy us, and we talked with all of them, and it really was, a good financial thing. And we just decided we weren't going to do that because they were going to start getting rid of all kinds of people and change our organization. And one of the things I think it's important to understand is, what are people's attitudes towards money, and we think that there's a journey between success and significance. People who are just focused on success think that their success depends on how much money they make, their position and all. People who are focusing on significance want to know, how can I help? What have I done to contribute? And all that kind of thing. So I think you want to make sure that you're really tapping into the values that you want to continue in your organization.
Thanks, Ken. So next question is a next generation question. So the next generation is graduating from college and not ready to commit and asking to put on hold the decision of who will lead until they mature a bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that's a nice thought. Why don't you go off and get some good experience? But we're not holding off, waiting for you. If you want to come in the organization and start to learn and grow with us, that's fine. If you want to go, Scott, was in the restaurant business and they got a lot of good experience, helping run hotels and stuff like that before he came with us. He went to the hotel school at Cornell. And Debbie, our daughter, who's head of marketing, she was in merchandising, and all, and worked in New York City for 3 years and all. And Margie's brother, Tom, was in the restaurant business too. And, so they didn't initially think that they were we didn't stop the business and wait for them to get ready. We kept on going, and then hopefully when they were ready, there was an opportunity for them to help us.
Our next question is, only one candidate can commit to staying for over 5 years because of age. When is best to decide?
How long somebody stays, you mean?
Well, I guess, maybe the question is, if the candidate can only be in the role for 5 years, how does that play into the decision making?
Well, 5 years is a pretty good length of time. But I think what you want to do if you want to continue to build your organization is building it with youth, not people who are ready to retire, in 5 years. I wrote a book called Refire, Don't Retire. Make the rest of your life the best of your life, and try to say to people, don't give up. I just recently celebrated the 61st anniversary of my 21st birthday. And people said, when are you going to retire? I said, when they take me up, You're
having too much fun, right?
I'm having too much fun. I'm refiring all the time, I'm still a new book coming out in February. I have a Lead Like Jesus ministry that I helped start that's now, in 24 nations. I do a lot of Zoom. Is this going to be great for me? Because I'm not going to have to travel much. Anybody wants me to speak like this, here we're Zooming in here together. Where in the past you'd want to say, Ken, you need to come and be, in person. In this, we just don't have to do that anymore.
One thing I want to ask about is, so as you think about succession, so you have a new leader coming in, that new leader has a certain set of skills, experiences, et cetera, to draw on, which is probably likely to be different than the person that the individual is taking over from. How do you think about building the organization, or to complement, or that leadership team to complement that individual, or is that something you can't really think too much about and you just hire the best people or have the best people for the roles reporting up to that leader?
Well, what you don't want to do is with the new leaders, hire people to gather around them that all have the same skills and strengths as they did, because, you're just getting too much. You want to hire people who have different. Suppose this new person really has great interpersonal skills and can really help motivate and excite people, but they're really not so great in finance. Well, you better put somebody in their team that they can trust, who really knows something about handling the financial aspect of it. And so you want to have people gathered around that build on their strengths, but also cover up their weaknesses in a way that the weaknesses aren't a problem. It's just a chance for more involvement from other people.
Great. We have another question from the audience. This one is, can you share thoughts on effective mentoring programs for our third generation business? We have 6 in G2 and so far 13 in G3. So I presume that some of this question is about, at various ages, how do you set up a system so that you have mentoring within the family, within the organization?
Well, first I'd have you read my book, The 1 Minute Mentor, that I wrote with Alabama Claire Ortiz, who lives in South America, is an expert in that area. But What we really argue is that everybody could probably use a mentor. Somebody that they can go to that, they're not responsible to, but they can sort of say, wow, I'm really worried about this. I'm concerned about this. What do you think and all? So that they can get some advice before they, share things with their people and all. So I think it's just great to set up a mentoring system for almost everybody in your organization, that they could have somebody that they can go.
Ken, what about mentoring for family members? It seems like it's a particular challenge within a family that if you're rising up in the company, you're next generation, can your dad or your mom be an effective mentor? And it's just a little different dynamic than an ordinary, or do you look to an uncle or who do you look to within the family for mentoring, given the different dynamics of the family?
My wife is a tremendous mentor for our son, Scott. They meet on a weekly basis, and he talks about different issues because she's been president, and she knows what some of the issues are. And so I think it's really good to have a chance to mentor each other, and sometimes they bring me in to say, Ken, how do you think we can pump people up to get them excited about a new idea, a new way to doing, because that might be a strength area for me. And our daughter Debbie, heads up marketing. She's looking for good marketing help from people that we know who are consultants and all. It's interesting. There's a lot of us in this field that help each other. We have an organization called ISA, which is Instructional Systems Association, and it brings all of our competitive organizations in the leadership training field together. And we come together every year for 2.5 days and share everything we know except our sales strategies, and because what we want to do is, why would you want to be number one in a lousy industry? We'd like to help everybody rise up in a sense. And people say, God, that's a crazy idea, but it really works. We have so much fun at our annual meeting, talking with each other from our competition. And how's it going? God, you should see what we're doing with this, and all that. What are your thoughts? Here's what we've done, And these people say, well, why would you do that? Well, because you need to constantly have a learning philosophy if you want to run a great organization, or an organization that's going to last for over 40 years like we have. We're always trying to learn from each other, from outsiders and all. And we even had a great board of directors at one time with outsiders who were on our board. And we stopped that for a while, and now we're going to reboot it up with Scott as president. So, because all the other people were all buddies of mine and my wife's, and now he wants to bring in some of his outside buddies, that might help us as members of the board.
So Ken, I think we have time for maybe one more question. This one's from Ed Hart. I want us to say thanks to Ed from Hart Leadership Group for connecting us. And we share a similar passion in family-owned businesses, and so really appreciate Ed introducing us to you.
Ed Hart's a wonderful guy, and he married way above himself too.
I can't, Ed's a great guy, though, and I really appreciate him setting this up. So his question is to talk about the joy in staying engaged in the business and seeing your NexGen lead the company. How engaged are you with Scott on a daily basis, and how often does he tap into your experience and expertise?
Well, we have these family council meetings and these board of directors meetings. We meet at least 8 times a year formally, with outside consultants. But, we end up vacationing together. We all go to upstate New York in the summer. And we initially had a family place that Margie's brother Tom now kind of coordinates that family, but then Margie and I built the place, and then Scott built one, 2 cottages down, and now our daughter Debbie has her place 2 cottages down from that, and so we, our daughter-in-law Madeline, who heads up our coaching business, people have said, you work with these people. How come you vacation and play with them all the time? She says, because I love them, and I think that the more you interact with each other, the more you have an opportunity to develop positive seeing. We had the most wonderful time last week in Hawaii. We had 18 of us over there for the celebration of Margie's birthday, all in the same house. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. And so that we can't over.
Yeah, I think of this show, I won't name it, on HBO that the name a show about succession, and I think about the contrast you're just describing, the success you've had as a family and working through these issues, and just the heart that you bring to this is really amazing. So I really appreciate this conversation. True to prediction, this has been a highlight of my year talking to you. So I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Mike, who's going to talk about a survey.
That's right. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. Special thank you to Ken Blanchard and Mike Dierberg for their time and expertise. Please do take just a few moments to complete a brief survey that's going to pop up right after you leave the session. It will help us improve our service to you. With that said, have a great day, everyone. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Ken.
Bless you all.
You too.